So as Ali had introduced earlier, my name is Odunola Onadipe. I'm currently the lead operating officer, which is also the role of a chief operating officer at Detail Commercial Solicitors. Detail is a non-litigation law firm. We practice solely corporate commercial law, and we're located in Lekki, Lagos. So yesterday we had, we learned so much about tools, and today we're going to be looking at people management as it relates to digital workforce management, how to ensure or achieve operational efficiency in managing remote workers. Today's session is about digital workforce management, how we are all going to adjust to remote working. So the way I will go with this is just to take us quickly through my agenda. Ali, if you could flip the slide. I will be introducing the session, then I will take us through the elements of remote working, and then we're going to look at the strategies. There are 5 of them as we go along. And then I will take us through forecasts and challenges, and I know that questions may arise from there. I've also shared a few case studies that I have looked at that can also help us. There are links to this, and I know that Ali will share even as we go. Ali, go to the next slide, please. So under introduction, we will be, just a minute. Okay, yeah, at least flipping. So under introduction, we're going to look at the learning outcomes. I will say a few things that I read up as it relates to what we're discussing today. I'll take us through very quickly definitions of the various aspects of remote working. I will talk about some facts, and then we will look at what the deal is. Then under the elements, we will look at how to make things.
Sonia, more very. Why I can my chain here? People want to use you. Because I someone will tell me to do it. Go binu. On pe ko to bita gan. Yo ba ye to binu atita. Oh yeah,
Is this person, please mute your microphone. Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. Things happen. We're all trying to get used to this whole remote working thing. So it's fine. So we're back on track. All right, so I was saying that under the elements, I will look at how to make it work, and also who has the responsibility of making remote working work. Then we will go to the strategies, and then we'll look at forecasts and challenges, and then we'll take questions. I'm sure that would work. That would be fine. So next slide, Ali, please. So the learning outcome for today, it's been said over and over again. We will understand workforce management and improvement for law firms, and then we'll understand how best to apply remote working methods for better operational efficiency. Next slide. I like to share, when I read something up and I know that it's helpful for us to know. So World Economic Forum, I'm sure we're very familiar with that. And the reason why I'm talking about this, so I've decided to speak about this very quickly, is because we cannot deny the fact that we are compelled to push forward faster than we planned to. When I say push forward into the new world of work, into the future of work, we are there now. As at last year, I remember at one of our sessions at ALAN, a session of Law Firm Administrators of Nigeria, we talked about, oh, there is going to be a new world of work. There is a new future coming, and we all thought maybe 2025 it would come. Who knew pandemic was going to happen? The old COVID-19 pandemic was going to happen, but it did. So it has served as a catalyst to pushing us into that future that we thought we wouldn't get into until about 2025. So World Economic Forum, WEF, according to them, it was said that COVID-19 has changed workforce management forever in 5 major ways. And these are the 5 ways I want to talk about very quickly in here. From needing to rapidly reskill staff, right, to leaders changing their competencies, as well as inculcating the culture of transparency and trust, underline the word trust, especially as remote workers will need to work more disparately. And also, it has also, one other key way is the fact that talent managers, and that speaks to you and I, who are managers of people, we are now needing to enhance our individual and social well-being offerings. You know, on behalf of the organization, we have to come up with social well-being offerings, or even individually, we need to now come up with how to make sure that we're socially well, even in all of this. Especially, you know, also as well as understanding, one other thing is that we are forced or compelled to understand what working in a more agile way looks like. Now, not a lot of organizations are structured to work, you know, in an agile way, but this pandemic, what has happened now is beginning to show that there is need for us to understand agile working. For those who are already working, you know, that way, good for them. There is need to do much more, because agility now for organizations is going to be the number one factor that can enhance productivity. And that's what we're really all about. So these 5 ways are what I've listed on the screen that you can see. Need to reskill staff, shift in leadership styles and competency, culture change, you know, there's need for transparency and trust, social well-being, and, you know, for talent attraction especially, and talent management, and also to understand agile working. WEF declared that the pandemic has served as a catalyst, and I totally agree, to reinvent the future of work and also create opportunities for organizations to start to look at things differently. And that's a fact. Some organizations are already doing that. Some may not be doing that yet, but I hope that with this discussion and this session that we have today, as talent managers, as people managers, we will start to support, not necessarily push, managing partners or MDs, if you don't work in a law firm, to start to begin to look at things differently, because that's really the way to survive in this new world that we're in. So most importantly for us in this part of the world, one thing is clear. We have seen, and I think that even for a lot of other organizations who may not have gladly embraced remote working, for whatever reason, maybe they are too traditional, especially like our law firms in Nigeria, if I may. What this pandemic has shown us is that with the right digital tools, physical proximity can be greatly reduced in the world of business. And we can see, because while lockdown was happening, a lot of organizations continued to work. Some worked skeletally, but some actually continued to be as productive as they were, right, when the pandemic had not happened. So I know that yesterday we had discussed a lot about tools, but if I can borrow the words of Mark Mader, the president and CEO of Smartsheet, and I put the quote here, technology is not the silver bullet, it is an enabler. There are so many other things that are involved in ensuring that remote working is achieved. Technology is just one of it. And like it says here, it is the enabler, but there are a few other things that we will see. We will discuss 3 elements that make remote working work, if I can put it that way. So Ali, if you can move to the next slide for me. I want to take us quickly through definitions. And the reason why I'm taking us through the definition, Ali, if you can move to the next slide. No, I don't think, no, to the previous one. The previous one, yes, where we have definitions, thank you. The reason why I'm taking us through this definition is because it's very easy to assume that we all know the various forms of working remotely, but there are actually many aspects to it. So remote working is basically working from any location outside of your traditional workplace, you know, outside of your regular primary office location. So remote workers therefore could be frequent freelance workers, you know, digital nomads, that's what they call them, who just, I know some guys who are IT consultants and they don't work in an office, but they work remotely as consultants, whatever you want them to do. And you have people that can be in America, for example, and they're consulting for you here in Nigeria, because a lot of what they have to do, it can be done remotely. So these people are called digital nomads. Or you also can have travelers who work from wherever work catches up with them. They are also remote working in that sense. It could be in the aircraft. I mean, I've been in the aircraft, seen many people open their laptops and they continue to work and send emails and do whatever work they need to do. Even in vehicles, if you're driven, you know, if you have a driver, even in Lagos, sometimes because we spend hours in traffic, you find out that you can do a lot working on your laptop. That's if you're driving and you're not the one at the steering wheel. These are also workers who choose to work in virtual offices or cafes. And Nigeria has also developed in that area where you have a lot of people set up offices and you are told that with a little amount, you can rent office space for the number of hours, you pay per hour, and you have Wi-Fi connection for you. So you work virtually and you don't have to be in your traditional workspace. So that's where we are in terms of remote working. Now, an aspect of remote working is telecommuting, and that one is pretty simple in terms of the definition that it is. Telecommuting or telework, as it were, mean that work is done on the move while you're commuting. And then there is the work from home, which we have now tagged the acronym WFH. That is as it is. You work from the confines of your home, right? Your home is your office location. And then the third aspect of remote working kind of is flex time. Flex time talks about you deciding what your work schedule is. So we have the traditional 9 to 5 work schedule, which is what everyone is used to. But with flex time, you can choose when you want to resume work and when you want to stop. And I know that as time goes on, we're going to have a mix of flexi workers at our places of work and those who work in the office. Flex work is just simply, like I said, a system that allows for employees to choose their resumption time and their closing time. So these are the 4 aspects of remote working that we should know as we move on. If we can go to the next slide, please. I want to now share with us some facts which should be clear to us. So a few facts that I came across when I was studying, it's worthy of sharing. It's essential that we understand that remote work is not just convenient for employers and employees, but studies have shown that it is also more effective. Now, according to Gallup's report, employees across various industries who spend 60 to 80% of their time working remotely, it's been recorded that they had the highest rate of engagement. Now that's a fact, okay? This is the result of some reports. Gallup is a trusted research group, and every time they do survey, their results are always very candid. So remote work is a good thing if we look at this first fact. It's a good thing because employees are gaining flexibility and work-life balance or work-life blend or work-life integration, if I may. Then companies are seeing spikes in productivity and creativity. So everyone seems to be saving money, right? Okay, we'll see as it goes. Then another study, the second fact is that another study found that remote workers put in more than 40 hours, right, per week. And this is, and when it was calculated, it says that it's almost twice as often as what those who work in offices put in. And this is a Stanford economics research result. So another fact is that a study by an economics professor, that's Nicholas Bloom, found that employees who worked from home were 13.5% more productive than those performing the same jobs in an office. That's another fact. So take note of that. The reason why I'm going through this fact is so that we can see that we need to start moving from the mentality of, sticking to the traditional way of working. Even when pandemic is over or when the lockdown ceases, we must start to see the advantage of, digital working, if I can put it that way. So another fact that I want to also mention is the fact that 83% of respondents said that they would rather, that this is in another survey, that they would rather work for an organization that provide flexible working. 83%, that's the whooping amount. 83% people profess that they would be more loyal, to an employer that provides flexible working options. Then another 46% actually says that they had to quit, and some said they turned down a job that didn't offer the kind of flexibility. Now, while this may not be the result in this part of the world, especially Nigeria, but we will see that people are opting. People are going to, if these options, otherwise, okay, no, let me rephrase. Let me put it this way: we will start to see a replica of this result if we do some form of survey also in Nigeria. And I think at this point, maybe Ali, we should come up with the first poll, right? So that we can also take some form of poll to see if we can also achieve this kind of result. Ali, are you there? Ali, can we take the poll now? Can you hear me? Is it from my end?
Yes, the poll is up now.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
So is your organization working remotely or planning to?
Okay. So if you could just respond to that poll, because the facts we're sharing here, they are results from survey done in the United States. It would be good to know how we are thinking and what's happening here in this part of the world.
Okay. So I think you can continue now.
Okay. So with all of this said, right, can we go to the next slide, the deal? So make no mistake, remote workers are still working, because one of the things that I know has been the bone of contention for us in this part of the world is the fact that, oh, when people work from home, do they really work? Oh, they won't really work, they'll be sleeping or faffing or going to the shopping malls and all that. The truth of the matter is that remote workers must be productive. That's the first thing, as with all others, of course. Then there is need for them to also connect with their teams and clients or customers, for those who are not in the legal industry. In the legal industry, the people we relate with are our clients. And for those who are not in that industry, we call them customers. So first thing is they must be productive, right? That's the point we need to make. Secondly, they have to connect always with their teams, right? So maybe we have teams still working in the office, and they are working from maybe home or they're telecommuting, whatever they are doing. If we have a mix of both remote workers and those who work in the traditional brick and mortar, then they also have to be managed effectively. So these three deals, and of course, these three things I've mentioned here, being productive, needing to connect, and also being managed effectively, they're really the reason why we're gathered this morning, why we want to discuss very quickly, and I won't waste time. These demands can create challenges, and that's a fact, particularly in areas like data accessibility and also communication. And we have seen a lot of ways. Some of the things we discussed yesterday talks about the use of data and also how data can be achieved. Let's go to the next slide. So we understand the deal, and we're going to be looking at the how in the next slide. So I said I was going to discuss three elements or ingredients, if you like, that make up remote working. And there are three things. Remember, I quoted Maida earlier, and I said that technology is not the silver bullet, but it's an enabler. So three ingredients that we must know to make remote work work is, one, you have teams. And I dare say that this is actually the most important ingredient of all. Then the second one we have there is tool. So the team actually is the engine. And then we have tools, that's the second one. The tools, basically the software systems, the social channels, and other tools to create efficiencies of scale. Then the third one that we have there is the process. So we have TTP. The process is the strategies and workflow that actually run the engine, that run the team. Remember, I mentioned that the team is the engine. So let's take a quick look at the team. Stay on this slide, it's fine. I'm just going to discuss further. Remain on this slide, Ali. Thank you. So for teams, this is obviously the most important ingredient in all of this. Not everyone can work in a remote environment, and that's the truth. And also not everyone can manage remote environments. So it is essential that when you are setting up your team, if this wasn't done before, it's something that talent managers or people managers need to start to do. When creating teams in a remote work environment, or if you're going to dabble into remote working, it is essential that your team, you have doers. Doers are people with the can-do attitude. They are reliable. They get things done no matter where they are, without anyone checking on them, without anyone, if I use our Nigerian phrase, pursuing them. There are people who naturally are doers. They enjoy doing things because things have to be done. Then the second set of people you want to have on your teams are people who you can trust. They are transparent people who are reliable, people who are trustworthy, because the fact is the foundation for which remote work is built is trust. So it runs both ways though. You have to hire people that you can trust. And then when you hire them, you have to trust them. We have one challenge that I may say that we have in I don't know whether it may not necessarily be Nigeria, but I will speak from the point of view of someone who works there in Nigeria, is that some of our leaders or managing partners find it very difficult to trust their people. And I can understand if it's a function of maybe something had prompted that before. But generally speaking, if your hiring process is done in such a way that integrity or trust is one of the core quality that you're looking for in your people, you won't have a problem when it comes to situations where you need to trust them on their job. So hiring people that are transparent is very key. Then on your team, you now also have to have good communicators. In the past, I know that this may not have been a critical skill or competency that we look for when we're hiring, but it has to become a core competence for every single person that will be hired, because by the time we move to this, well, maybe not full, some may not end up doing full remote working, but for my organization, for example, we're working remotely fully. It's very essential that you have good communicators, people who can write well, because remote working means that there will be more communication in writing and there will be more communication in speaking. So gone are the days when you hire someone because they are highly skilled, but they're not articulate, or they don't speak well, or they don't write well. Gone are the days when you think, oh, we'll just put that person in the back office, so it's okay, other people can do the speaking or do the client facing. Now, everyone has got to communicate well, whether verbally or in writing. So that's that about teams. Then secondly, I'll go to tools. Tools, this is very important because they are what you use to organize your team. So we cannot emphasize having the right tools for communication, collaboration, or even fun tools. I know that when we're talking about tools, the first thing we talk about is, oh, tools for storage, tools for collaboration, tools for document sharing and all that. How about tools for having fun? Because when people work remotely, I mean, there is need to even do more in terms of relationship, in terms of human relations. Why am I saying that? Typically, when we're in the brick and mortar office and all of us are there in our traditional office, you know, you take a tea break, you get up, you go get tea, you meet someone on the corridor, you say hi, hello, you chat, you go to the cafeteria to have lunch, you have someone you're having conversations with. But with remote working, you will realize that people are just locked up and glued to their computer, whether you're working from home or you're telecommuting. So there is less face-to-face interaction. So it is essential that we create this fun. Even when we're working in brick and mortar offices, we always have this traditional thing we do in Nigeria that we call, thank God it's Friday, TGIF. It's so that people can, you know, let down their hair, you know, take off their ties and just relax, because we know that sometimes work can really burn you out. You'll be burnt out, you'll be tired, and you can start to have mental breakdown if you're not careful. So fun tools are also things you must note as part of the tools that you must have for your remote workers. So maybe we run through a few examples of tools that you can use for communication and collaboration. I know of Google Suite of tools. I know of Microsoft Office tools. A lot of people are already using that, especially SharePoint in the legal industry, where you can share documents. Then we have Microsoft Teams, which has become one of the most used, maybe after Zoom, if I'm correct, for collaboration. So there's document sharing that can be done on Microsoft Teams. You can review and do documents. Then there's real-time chats for instant chatting, excuse me. And then there's video calls and audio calls, and then there's calendar management. Then there's also a tool called Smartsheet. It's a collaborative worksheet management platform that allows for employees to optimize their workflow. I'm sure Ali and his people would be able to give you, more examples of tools that can be used in this instance. And then, of course, there's the OneDrive for storage. I also know of Basecamp for storage. So that's that about that. Then if you could just mention a few social networking or chat tools. I know of Microsoft Yammer that we can use to do quick chats with people who are not with you where you're working, who are far away or who are working remotely. And then I've also heard of Kaizala, and I also know of Slack. I think Slack is basically used mostly in America, but I'm sure that these tools will start to be deployed in Nigeria because now everyone across the entire world seems to be working remotely globally. Then there's, of course, the old video conferencing tools. We have Zoom, we have Skype, we have Microsoft Teams also that can be used for video conferencing. You have FaceTime for those who use Apple products. Of course, WhatsApp too. They've improved their video thing. You can do more than 5 people because there was restriction before, but now you can do more than 5. So if you prefer WhatsApp, you can use WhatsApp for meetings. And then of course there's GoTeam Now for the phone tools, I think I know only of one, and that is that's House Party. There's an House Party app that I think you can have a party on. People have been doing Zoom parties. There's also House Party tool that you can find and you can use to do TGIF for your team and even have some games played while you are at it, for team bonding. So that's that about tools that can be used. And I want to mention that when you're using these tools, ensure that you encourage people to use memes and GIFs when chatting so that it can create a relaxed atmosphere. So on processes, there is no doubt that we all know that good processes get work done efficiently and effectively. So processes basically is the how of achieving your set goals. You have set goals that you need to achieve. Without processes of achieving them, you can't achieve them effectively. So processes provide structure and direction for getting things done. It's really basically as simple as that. So for example, you ensure that people send in their work plan at the start of the week. That's a process. It would be imperative to create a virtual administrative process. That's if you do not have practice management software, for example, where you can handle leave application, medical administration, billing, performance management, fund processing, and a whole myriad of others. So other processes that you can also put in place when it comes to remote working is to try to ensure that you hold weekly team videos every week to get feedback from your people. It's essential you make it a video because you should be able to see people. It creates a form of connectedness so that people don't think they're in silos when they don't see other people. Then also establish fun traditions. Like I said, maybe you have a daily morning coffee breaks, for example, or you choose to have weekly hangouts for relaxation. You can have Zoom TGIFs, like I mentioned earlier, or a house party for TGIF. You can do team activities or even health activities. You can come up with something healthy, an activity that people can do and we can do as a team periodically, because this also is a part of your wellness program that you can put in place if you're going to manage remote workforce. Then I would also suggest that you find ways to celebrate team members weekly. Maybe you identify someone who's done something impressive in the course of the week, for example, and you just celebrate them, mention what they've done so that people can give them kudos. These are all things that help, well-being of your colleagues. Then create bodies. That's one thing we can also do when we're managing remote workers, meaning that you can pair people up to check on each other, maybe on a weekly basis. If, for example, if I'm paired up with Ali, I make it a point of duty to make a phone call and just chat outside of work to say, how are you coping? How are you doing? So these are things that we may not have thought about, but these are things that are essential when we're managing people who are not with you face to face. And these are the things that ensure effective management, of people. So finally, monthly one-on-ones also with supervisors so that they know what you're doing and you can keep them abreast. I usually will say to my team that you have the responsibility of making yourself relevant, because sometimes employers are there, they're thinking, you may not know that, is this person really working? What is this person really doing? So it's essential that as talent managers, as a people, as human resource managers, we should create a schedule where there is one-on-one monthly meetings with supervisors. If we're a large organization, maybe you can do every 2 months or something. So that's that about the 3 ingredients that make up remote working. Ali, can we go to the next slide? So I'll run through very quickly who has the responsibility of making this work. So managers have responsibilities, team members also have responsibilities, and that's the fact. So for managers, and I will ask this responsibility in the form of questions. Is your team able to communicate effectively? You have to ensure that. Have you selected your preferred team tools? Have you picked a video technology solution that would work for everyone? Is everyone down with the time zone? For example, we have people who have branches outside of Nigeria in other time zones, for example. That would apply to you. Then what about OS differences? You know, operation software, what about that? Then are you working on team culture? And this is also very important, the culture of your team. What are you doing about it? Are you upgrading it? Are you changing it? Are you even just coming up with a new? Because working remotely is a totally different ballgame to working in brick and mortar offices. Then for team members, you have to check your workspace. Is it comfortable? Is it clear? A lot of people that didn't think that they were going to need to work from home, some may not even have the basic desk and the basic comfortable desk to place their laptops on, and comfortable chair. So as team members, you have the responsibility of ensuring that you have a good workspace. Then do you have a smartphone? Now, people may wonder why smartphone. Now, the situation we are now requires everyone to have a smartphone, and not necessarily an expensive smartphone. Just make sure that your smartphone can do hotspots if your internet goes down and you need to use your phone to connect to your laptop. Then you also need smartphones to be able to, if you're working, if you're telecommuting, for example, or you leave your home where your internet is, are you able to take on video meetings even on the move, on the go? How about webcam, good internet connection? Now that's something else that in Nigeria, we may not even have control over. I make bold to say that one of the major challenges that most of us may say that we have, and we're going to take a poll next on that question, is connectivity. Some homes will have up to 5 internet network, and all of them are not exactly working. How about power situation in Nigeria? You know, we have to struggle, you know, to make sure to use electricity, and then people are now spending money ensuring those who didn't have generator before will have to buy generator, and even those who have generator will have to ensure that they're fueling it. One of my colleagues wrote something on Twitter this morning. He wrote that in another, if my generator could speak, and you know, I'm paraphrasing, if my generator could speak, I'm sure the guy will say, "Oga, what's happened now?" You know, meaning you are overusing me. What have I done to you? And that's the story for almost all of us, because we know the situation of our electricity in Nigeria. And also, just before we take that poll, Ali, please get ready with the poll that checks on the challenges that people have concerning working remotely. And then, do you have what you need to work remotely? This is also your responsibility as a team member. Get your account set up for collaboration tools that you need to use. And then, are you able to access or share documents easily? Now, these are responsibilities that we have to also have as people who work remotely. So, Ali, if we can take the poll now before I move on to the next slide for 5 strategies for managing remote employees. I think I have just a few more minutes and I'm rounding up shortly. The next poll, please.
So the poll is up now. What challenges do you face with remote working?
Yeah, that's great. So I would, while that is going on, the next thing I'm going to now look at us discussing is the 5 strategies that I've put up, and this is courtesy of Center for Creative Leadership in the United Kingdom. Is the poll done? Are we?
Yes, the poll is ongoing.
Oh, it's ongoing, okay. All right, but just wait for a moment.
Okay, so.
Okay, poll done now. Thank
you.
We're
Done.
Okay, if we can go to the next slide where we have 5 strategies for managing remote employees. This slide is courtesy of Center for Creative Leadership, and I think it's something we can all learn from. So they have said here that 5 strategies for managing remote employees include: 1, that you define the team. Remember that we had mentioned earlier that we have three major ingredients, well, three ingredients basically for making remote work. And the most important one is team. So how you define your team is critical to the success of the team's performance. So defining your team, you have to identify the people with the right skill set. So now it's no more about position, it's about skills and competencies for the work you want that team to perform. In those days, we were maybe role defined or role conscious when it comes to setting up. But now, if you're going to work in a more agile way as an organization, you would focus on ensuring that you set up teams based on the skills that you require for that particular project. So agility includes you getting people to work as modular talents. So sometimes you set up a team and you may not necessarily, you don't have a full, you have a team, and then when you now need to, maybe for example, deploy someone to who is very good at maybe making slides. So let's say I'm a chief financial officer, for example, and I have a major presentation to do. I know all the things I want to put, in that presentation, and one aspect of that will require me doing a slideshow or slide presentation, PowerPoint presentation for management or for the board, for example. I can deploy this aspect of the role to someone who will just come into the team, and the sole responsibility would just do the slide, and then that's it. And that same person can be effective, helping people in other teams to do that. So that's where you deploy talents, modularly. So that can also work. So, as talent managers, we just need to be more creative with how we set up our team and we define them. Then secondly, the second thing they mentioned here is to clarify roles and expectations. Roles and expectations. So everyone knows what they're doing and what is expected of them to deliver on that team. So the third one they mentioned here is to establish procedures. And remember that when I mentioned the three ingredients, I also talked about processes. So procedures falls under that. Establish what procedures the team will go through to ensure the best results, as the case may be. Not every procedure will work. So you will have to choose the best procedures rather, to make sure that you achieve results. Then the fourth item here is to invest in trust. So you see, this is another organization that is talking about strategies to manage remote employees, and trust is coming up again. So it's really key. Like I mentioned earlier, it is foundational that trust is key. You have to invest in trust. You have to trust your people. You have to hire people that you can trust, because remote working only works when there's trust. Everything is about trust, because someone had asked me before that, oh, so how do you ensure that your people are working when they're working remotely? The only way is process productivity. So you have a performance system put in place, and that's part of the procedures that you will establish, a way to measure what everyone is doing. So people know that it is what you turn out as product that tells me, for example, that you're working. It's not in you just verbally saying to me, oh, ma, I'm working. No, I need to have to see it. So we will change the process from the way we know it back. If we're in the office, I can easily walk into your office and say, oh, so what are you working on now? And then you verbally tell me. But when you are working remotely, I don't see you. I can only see what you send via email, or what you submit, or the documents you share with me to review. So people are going to learn to work more productively, and that's a fact. So you will have to invest in trust. This is another strategy. And the fifth thing that is mentioned here, which I had also talked about earlier, is that you recognize. First of all, recognize your people for what they have done. And then there's also the bit of recognizing the impact of differences. I mentioned earlier that people are different. Some people, for example, this remote working works for them. They like to be alone in their corner and just do their work. For people like me that are extroverted, for example, we call them extroverts. They like to, part of what drives us is communication and face-to-face interaction with people. Sanguines, for example, with people with temperament, sanguine temperament, they like to communicate, they like to talk, they like to have people around them. And some people actually just want to be by themselves, no noise, no talking. So this remote working works for them. So you have to identify differences and find ways to manage people differently when you're managing remote employees. Let's go to the next slide. So I'm just going to mention very quickly also that a lot of the things that you also, some of the things that you also have to do when managing remote employees is to establish call etiquette. There are little things that you have to put in place. Establish call etiquette. For example, people don't know that when you're signing on to Zoom, you have to mute your mic immediately when you're not speaking. Keep your video on during video calls. If you're working from home, do not take video calls in your pajamas, or when a video call is coming on, I say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't turn on my video, I'm still in my pajamas. You know, all those kind of things, you have to educate people, because for some people, this is new and they have to know just what's right to do. Then in video calls, and then another thing we have to learn, if I can mention this as part of the tips, is that we give, just a minute. Yeah, so we're talking about some tips now. Give constructive feedbacks over video calls, not on chats or audio calls. A lot of people may not know this as part of the etiquette for communicating effectively. When you have to give constructive feedbacks over video calls, the person you are talking to can see you, you can see the person. So don't give feedbacks on chats or on audio calls. Also, it's been said that when you have to address issues immediately, excuse me, to avoid communications going rogue. So if there are issues, address it immediately with remote workers. Don't leave it pending and address it at the end of the month or later on. Otherwise, communication is just going to go rogue. Then, unless someone is in the same room, all meetings should hold via video conferencing. You should not merge remote workers with face-to-face in meetings. So let's say we have meetings that we're holding, and then you get people to sign on to that meeting, except where it's absolutely necessary and the person can't come in. So it's either you make sure that even for those in the office, everyone does remote calls at the same time. It's easier that way, even if you have some people face-to-face. As long as you have people attending that meeting that will be signing in remotely, then make sure that the entire meeting, everyone is doing a video conference, not some physically there and then some calling in. So finally, it's also essential that we are not overly rigid. We should allow non-work chatting sessions, even during team meetings. So after we discuss the whole thing about work, just on a lighter note, let people just have chats generally. After all, if we're in meetings, people can say jokes or just say something on a lighter note. So we also have to replicate this when we're doing communications remotely with our remote workers. And furthermore, yeah, I think all this I had mentioned earlier, so I won't spend time on this. I'm very conscious of me having just about 2 minutes more, if I may. So if we can go very quickly to challenges, I believe. Let's go to challenges, which we've mentioned earlier. Ali, if you can flip the slide, yes. After this is just one more slide and then we're done. So some of the challenges that we face, with this whole remote working thing is lack of face-to-face supervision. So supervisors are going to need to learn how to manage remote workers, and human resource managers, people managers, if people need to be trained on how to supervise remote workers, please ensure that this is done. People just need to know. We can't assume that they know. Then people also would have challenges of social isolation, for example, me. So sometimes even as HR managers, we have to find ways to engage our people and teach them not to feel isolated, or set up systems that make them feel part of the team, that connects them to the team all the time, so they are not, feeling like they're in a silo by the time they even return to work. Then of course, people also have the challenges of distraction at home for those who've got children, because now currently children's schools are still closed. So there are children at home, and we'll have these few challenges. People need to know how to deal with them and have the time for work and time that they manage their children. Then of course, the issue of mental stress, depression, wellness issues, all that is also in place. And there are lots of apps that advise on how to manage the mental health of our employees. So these challenges are what we also must identify and also address as people managers. Then of course, communication, we've talked about that, infrastructure, tools, and also culture. So if I can run through to the next slide, I want to just mention a few things that I know that we will start to see the more of. And this will be basically my last slide before the slides on case study. So there is no doubt organizations are going to begin to reinvent, like World Economic Forum had mentioned, and it's a fact. Some organizations are already reinventing their business model, they are reinventing strategies, they are reinventing their entire business. Yes, then organizations also, like I said earlier, will embrace remote working and flex time. You have to expect that. So as people managers, we have to start preparing for this to happen. Yeah, leaders will focus on new competencies. I've mentioned that. New technologies will necessitate new roles. We will see more and rapid ADIs. ADIs is automation, digitalization, and innovation. A lot of that is going to begin to happen. Then future growth of organizations will now depend on labor quality. It will depend on digital transformation. It will also depend on increased productivity. So HR managers will consider culture and projects more when they're hiring. Also, another thing that I would say is leaders will focus on new competencies, which includes digital skills, transparency, and empathy. The new culture of trust, transparency, and openness will also begin to take the place. So control will have to give way to trust. So for most of the managers who are control freaks, who micromanage people, they won't be able to do that anymore. This will give way to trust. And as HR managers, you have to start helping managing partners to learn this particular skill. Then again, in this era that we are, employees will benefit from taught new mindsets, behaviors, and values. And these are all positives, right? And it's a good thing for employees. And this is also an era where, as HR managers, we will have to do either of these three things for our people, or even all of these three. You have to reskill your people, you're going to have to upskill them, and you're going to have to also let some people be multi-skilled. So you have people reskilling, you have people upskilling, and then you have them multi-skilling. Then of course, generally speaking, there'll be growth in side hustle. Expect that. People are going to they are going to be able to do other things because they're working from home, and they can do a few side hustles alongside without necessarily engaging in conflict of interest. And then finally, what I'll mention is that individual and social well-being will become very critical, when it comes to managing people. Now, I'll say this, World Health Organization found recently in China that 45% of health workers in China are suffering from anxiety, while the prevalence of depression in Ethiopia, for example, trebled in April alone. This is from Raconteur magazine that I read. So it's essential that we know I don't know whether to call it. Okay, let me rephrase and say it this way. It is important that we know that mental well-being at this time is one of the most critical things that human resource managers, people managers generally must pay attention to. So as a talent manager, do not overlook, mental health of your people and their general well-being as it relates to remote working. So we all have our work cut out for us. Because the growth drivers of the future, like I mentioned, engagement, and that's majorly us, HR people, ensuring there's engagement in the workplace or at workstation, if you like. Then productivity also. So we have to find means of ensuring that people are productive, and we are measuring that productivity. It's also an aspect of ensuring productivity anyway. And finally, learning also will also be a growth driver. People have to wear their learning helmets all the time, and encourage people to learn from webinars, to go on trainings online, and upskill themselves. So the next slide just basically shows a few case studies, which I'm sure when Ali shares the slide, you can check out. Case studies, more and more companies are realizing the benefits of recruiting employees to work in home-based jobs or work remotely. So if you look at BT Workstyle case study, and you also spend time to read up iHotest case study, you can also check out Zapier. I read Zapier a lot, and a lot of the things I'm sharing with you is from what I read about how Zapier has been able to achieve remote working all through. It's a remote working organization. So for those who don't know Zapier, Zapier is a global task automation remote company that allows end users to integrate the web applications that they use. So they are based in America, in California, but it employs a workforce of over 250 employees, and they are located across the United States and also in 23 other countries. And they all work remotely, and they've achieved something with that. So we can look up these people, these case studies, and just read more to improve our knowledge. So I think that's it for today's session. The next slide just shows my contact. Thank you for having me take this. I think we'll take questions now. And if we have polls, I think we have a few more questions on the poll. If Ali can quickly.
Yes, we have a few more questions for the poll. But first, thank you very much, Odun, for that fantastic presentation. And I've definitely learned a lot on that particular topic. However, I know a lot of us will agree that it's important for us to adjust to remote working methods, especially now that it's not going to be as flexible as it was before. So the next poll will involve the acceptance of remote work. And it's basically asking, how is your firm leadership embracing remote working? So the poll is up now. Thank you for your responses. And if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box. Our next poll is simply asking what tools you use the most for remote working. Thank you for your responses. And that brings us to the end of our polling for this particular session. So before I go into the questions, Odun, I would like to ask, first off, how do you manage collaborative work? And what tools do you recommend? By collaborative work, I mean in terms of document preparation, document review, things that involve multiple people or teams working on. How do you manage that? And what tools you really recommend for lawyers that might struggle with this kind of collaborative work?
Okay, I think that I'm not an expert with technology tools, but I would speak from knowledge of what I know. Microsoft Office has quite a number of tools that you can deploy. I am aware that people are familiar with SharePoint, so you can collaborate on that. You can review documents, and there can be online sharing while multiple persons can be working on a particular document using that same using that tool. So once I'm doing something, my supervisor can immediately see and can review, and we can share documents like that within him. That's one tool that I know is quite effective. Then for managing, sometimes you can use Clockify. I'm aware of Clockify, and I know that someone had raised that question when Theo had a session yesterday. I can't remember exactly what the person asked, something about where to host Clockify or something when he was mentioning some of the data analytic tools. Because I think he said that it's a preventive or whether preemptive type of analytic tool. That's what it is. But Clockify is something.
That's Clockify.
Yeah, that's Clockify. So Clockify is a tool that you can use to, yes, when people sign on, to be able to measure hours spent on a particular document. So, you had asked me what tools to use and how to manage those things. So also, I know also of Basecamp. Basecamp is not just it's a storage tool, yes, but a lot of the things that you store there, people can easily go back to pick, maybe emails or correspondences on a particular transaction, work on it, and once you're done, you put it there. So to a large extent, that's more storage. But for SharePoint, you can use that platform to look at documents review and then share with your team members.
Thank you very much, Odun. We have one more question from BNI. It goes, how do you practically determine or confirm candidates who are trustworthy at interview level? What are the empirical process that will reveal, or the empirical processes that will reveal these behavioral traits? I believe this is a purely HR question.
Yeah. So in that aspect, our interview process must be very comprehensive. So, I had mentioned that with what we have now and where we have found ourselves in this new future of work, human resource managers are going to have to review their recruitment process. So for example, I am a staunch believer of multiple types of processes when it comes to recruitment. At interview process, for example, so when you're hiring, I don't believe you should just do GMATs and all that. It's not a secondary school thing, but there must be areas where, for example, if you have a list of skills that you're checking for competencies or qualities you want in people, you have to ensure that every type of testing you do helps you to find if the person has that quality or that competence. So for example, in checking trustworthiness, right? It's a trick question that can work most of the time. So people have conducted tests and they've done tests, for example, and when you're having interviews with them, you have their test results with you, right? For example, and you can go that, oh, this particular question on joint venture, this is what you said. Are you sure? And then, or you ask, maybe for example, you're asking that, okay, so what was your response? Or you ask the question in another way and the person responds and you're asking them, is that what you wrote in your test? Now, oftentimes when people feel, or when people are not sure, right? And they don't want to admit that they are not sure about something, they will try to work around the answer and say, oh, no, what I was trying to say, so that it sounds like it sounds like the answer they think you are expecting. However, what you are trying to check is, if this person makes a mistake, will they own up? Because that's an integrity issue. There's nothing wrong with making mistakes or committing errors. So you have to find a way to ask questions that can check if they will own up to their errors or their mistakes, or perhaps you have even seen that they made a mistake in the test and then you raise and you ask them why. So if the person gives you a different answer, you can ask them, so why did you write this in your test, for example, or why was your answer like this in your test? And what the response that the person gives you will tell you whether they are being honest to say, yes, this is what I wrote in my test. And after the test, I realized I was wrong because I checked. And even if they say they are wrong, you can say, how did you know you were wrong? So it could be that they had checked before the interview to say, oh my God, I missed that answer on comma, or I missed that answer on this. A person that will be trustworthy must be able to own up to mistakes and accept corrections when they are corrected. So that's just one way. There are many other ways that we can come up with to check trustworthiness. I don't know that there is I don't know, except you're a psychologist, a scientific way to check that someone is actually trustworthy, except you hear them speak and you raise questions that drive them to that area where you're able to ascertain if this is a honest person. And sometimes even personal questions that you may want to ask them, maybe about gaps in their CV. They don't know what you're looking for. You're looking at gaps in their CV, or they left an organization and you're asking why. And these are reasons that you can easily find out because we have HR network. If they get the wrong and checking their references, you can find out. And immediately you can stop the recruitment if you realize that the response they gave you as the reasons for leaving is not exactly what happened in their previous place of work. So these are ways that you can find out if someone can be trusted before you hire them. I hope that answers BNI's question.
Thank you very much, Odun.